Good morning. I'm going to give you a short presentation this morning on the writer Shirley Jackson and her most famous short story, The Lottery. She was a noted short story writer, wrote 6 novels as well, the most famous of which is a horror novel called The Haunting of Hill House. Born in 1916, died in 1965. She was a wife, a mother, a writer, did a lot of different things, and was famous for being an extraordinarily gifted short story writer in her own time. She was married to a man named Stanley Hyman, who was a major literary figure in the 1950s and 60s as a critic and as a writer. And she lived in a town where he taught at Bennington College in Vermont. And in fact, Bennington is the setting for The Lottery. There's a link in Blackboard that'll tell you a little bit more about the story. The story was published in 1948 in the New Yorker. If you go to Blackboard, you can see what it looked like originally, how it appeared on the page with the cartoons and how it was laid out. It generated more hate mail than any other story ever written in the New Yorker, and much of those letters have been preserved, and a sampling of them is offered through Blackboard. If you go to the Shirley Jackson section, you'll see a link to some of the letters that Jackson received. Jackson said that she wrote the story in a few hours, that she didn't make any changes except for the one that her editor suggested, which was to use the date of publication as the date of the event of the lottery itself. So that's where the June 27th comes from. It doesn't have any significance beyond that. She said that the story came to her all at once and that she only essentially wrote one draft, made a very few minor changes in it. And she figured the whole thing out as she was walking back home with a stroller with one of her children after picking up the mail in the village post office. If you go to Blackboard, you can see that there were a number of TV and film and radio adaptations of the story, and I've got some links in there to some of the video versions that you might want to watch. None of them have the Silverlight problems that we had with The Dead, by the way. On the left here, this is a 1950s paperback version with a cover that has absolutely nothing to do with the story at all, but it certainly gets you excited about buying the book. Some details in the story that are kind of interesting. There's this village of about 300 people. It appears to be out in the country. Some things that some of you may find odd. There's no mayor, there's no alderman, there's no city council, there's no policeman, there's no sheriff. The only civic official that we meet is the postmaster. And that may be telling. If you carefully read the story, you'll notice that a lot of the ritual aspects of this particular event have been gone. There used to be oaths, they've taken that out. There used to be ritual greetings, they've taken that out. The box itself is a replacement from the original, and they use little pieces of paper now, not wood chips. So a lot's been changed, but the central feature of the lottery, the selection of one member of the town who's then stoned to death, hasn't changed at all. People in the story tell us that other villages nearby sometimes are so big they have to do the lottery over 2 days. Others have given it up completely. Old Man Warner, who's 77 in the story, the oldest man in town, calls them a pack of fools or a pack of young fools. He also says that a very interesting phrase, lottery in June, corn be heavy soon. And the idea is that maybe, just maybe, this is a harvest ritual, although no one's quite sure. This thing has a very structured nature to it. The men draw for families. If you're not an old enough man, you can't draw for your family. We have a son who's 16, he's not 18, so he can't draw. Wives draw with their husbands' families. They don't draw with their own or with their birth families. The family's chosen, and then each person in that family redraws, and one member of that family becomes the person who's stoned to death. What's interesting to me is that everybody is eligible in here. There's no low age limit. So if you're an infant, if you're a day old, you're in the lottery, which is kind of interesting. Tessie Hutchison is the one who comes in late in the story, and she's the one, of course, who gets chosen for this. And once Tessie is chosen, everybody stones her, even members of her own family. Her own children throw rocks. We're told that her little son, who's like 3 years old, is out there picking up little pebbles to throw. People give him pebbles to throw at his mother. Some of the details in this story are kind of interesting. Beyond that, there's a tremendous sense of reality in here. I mean, this thing seems like it could have happened anywhere. And in fact, a number of the letters to the New Yorker, people asked, where can I go watch this? Which is kind of stunning if you think about it. Something else to think about, could this happen in a city? Could this happen in an urban setting? Maybe the answer to that is in the other story we'll be reading, The Ones Who Walk Away from O'Malley's. Maybe the character names might tell us something. Mr. Summers, who runs the coal company, summer, coal, light, dark. Mr. Graves is the postmaster. And he's one of the lottery officials. Delacroix of the Cross is another family name, but it's also a New England, Northern New England, French-Canadian name. Tessie Hutchison might be referring to a very famous New England figure, Anne Hutchison, who was exiled from the Massachusetts Bay Colony, where the Puritans ruled over her religious views. And she went to Rhode Island, where she and Roger Williams, who had also been banished from the colony, helped found this, what later became the state of Rhode Island. She herself was massacred by Indians in 1643 in New York. Whether she's meant to be the Tessie of the story or just remind us or where the name comes from, I really don't know. There's a lot of commentary about that. Both this story and the ones who walk away from Omelas, the other story that we're dealing with this week, both rely very heavily on this idea of a scapegoat. And this comes from the Old Testament, from Leviticus chapter 16, verse 10, the idea of a living thing who sacrificed to kind of fill in for all the sins committed by the people of a tribe. New Testament scholars, some of them think that Jesus is the scapegoat at the beginning of the New Testament, that then becomes kind of the man who carries the sins, died for all of us, as they say in the New Testament, that he becomes the kind of scapegoat for the New Testament world that we live in. Okay. One of the issues I think that this story raises is the idea of choice. These people go along with this. Nobody stops anybody else. Nobody says, wait a minute, this is stupid. There's no law or clergy or religious or any kind of structure beyond just the people themselves. And so you have to kind of wonder what kind of a choice these people have made to go along with this, and then by extension, what kind of a choice would we make? If we were in this story, what would we do?